Hi, it's me, Sheila. Welcome back to Lovin Sheila Shorts. This is number 27. I made a mistake last week. I said 31. It's 27. Okay, so I find myself kind of on a roll right now. I kind of find myself looking to continue on this road of love and emotional abuse. I feel like they're working together. So I find myself in a bit of a series right now. So I'm going to stay here because like I mentioned before, we've been doing a lot of critical reflection, and I'm just looking at life and looking at things around me and really trying to identify and kind of isolate situations and help me understand so that as we go to the next level, we can be ensure that we take what we've learned and apply it. You know, it's very easy to sit in a room and study and read and all these kind of things. But like I said, the true measure is when we have to execute, when we have to relate to other people, because it all works when I'm over here relating to Sheila and loving Sheila and doing what's best for me. But when I have to apply the same tools to relating to other people and working together and being cohesive, it becomes a little more challenging. And especially when you're coming from a place where you found yourself taking down and not really standing up for yourself and experiencing what I call emotional abuse and living with the damage that it creates. And one of the things I didn't mention last week is with a lot of abuse, with physical abuse, there's scars and people can see it and they're asking, like, what's wrong? What's going on? They intervene. But with emotional abuse, it's not always seen. And so you live silently, and that's part of how you lose your identity, you lose your self esteem, you lose your voice. And so recovering from emotional abuse, though I talked about in our last episode, surviving emotional abuse, we don't just want to survive. We obviously want to thrive, and we want to recover and build new foundations and build something to move forward and not look back. And that's where we are right now. And that's where we're going to pick up because we are growing. And so part of recovering from emotional abuse is applying the same characteristics of love that we're searching for in a partner to ourselves, because we have to recover from the emotional abuse. And part of that is recovering our self esteem and trusting ourselves again. All of little things of which I touched on just a little bit last week. But I want to get back into this. So when we talked about love, we talked about the, we're going to call it the pillars of love, the components of love. Let's see, they were care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, trust, honest and open communication. Now, these are the foundations of love that we expect from our partners and what we're looking for and what we, hope to give. We identified love as caring for the spiritual growth of another. And so also I want to say the self-love is caring for our own growth and our own spiritual growth, our, as I said before, our the growth of our soul, our mind, will, and emotions. And so now we have to, after emotional abuse, as we're recovering, we put, it would have been best if we had done this years ago or prior to this, but now we're in recovery mode. So we have to apply these same things, the care, respect, trust, to ourselves. So that's what we need to do. I need to care for myself like I would care for someone that I love. I need to trust myself. As I mentioned in my process, I had to learn to trust myself again because I had, in my mind, made some decisions that I felt were not best for me. I had endured some things, but part of dealing with emotional abuse is that, yes, you do become passive. And so I had to learn to not be passive and not let things go and speak up for myself and stand up for myself and identify areas that I feel are out of control. And even in my relationships today, I'm trying to implement this. If I see something or a pattern that is developing, rather than sweep it under the rug or let it go by, even though it could be minute. But if I see a series developing, a pattern developing, it's important to me to speak to that, just to let the person know this is something I have a concern about, to bring it to their attention. And also, what I've learned is sometimes folks don't necessarily respond when you bring it to their attention. For me, I'm trying to be more assertive in how it makes sure that I communicate, that I'm not being passive. If things are happening, that I'm like, hey, let's talk about this, that I'm communicating, because that wasn't always a strength of mine. What I also realized is that folks may not always hear you, they may not always be receptive to your feelings. And how does one deal with that? And so what I'm taking away at this point is, it's my the onus that I have is to communicate. The onus that I have is to assert myself. Now, beyond that, I can't control how you respond, what you do, if you make corrections, adjustments, if you validate my feelings. That's on you. But starting from where I am, and to avoid emotional abuse, it's important to me to make sure that I'm communicating and that I am assertive. And so that's where we are right now. And I'm continuing to read again this book here, All About Love, Bell Hooks. And one of the words, initially, she brought this conversation on when she said emotional abuse. And now I'm at a point, I saw this word, emotional equilibrium, and another word that just jumped off the page to me. And so I wrote down what it means. It's ability to recognize, process, and accept your emotions without judgment or suppression. It's balancing pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And that's kind of a mouthful for me, emotional equilibrium. And because in the process of recovering from emotional abuse, I certainly think that it's hard to maintain our emotional equilibrium. I am all about balance. I try to have so much balance in my life, to sometimes I feel to my own detriment. I can always see both sides of every story and whatnot. And I think that's part of how I became passive, because I'm very, I guess, empathetic and understanding. So for me, I had to learn how to balance that. And so emotional equilibrium stuck out to me like a sore thumb. So part of that, I looked it up. I looked that up too a little further to see like the components. We talked about the components of love, and the components of having good emotional equilibrium is being self-aware, knowing who you are, what your triggers are, just having an awareness of what elicits certain emotions, fight or flight or whatever, just being aware. I know me. Like I said last week, I said sometimes I have the ability to act brand new and like I don't know something, when I very well do. The Alice in Wonderland effect. I'm aware of that, working on it. Another thing, and this is important to me, self-regulation. That's another component of emotional equilibrium. And this is something that I'm gaining, I feel like I personally am gaining ground with, because in the past, and more abusive-ish type interactions or relationships, oftentimes I didn't feel right unless that situation was right, unless we were at peace, unless we had no conflict. And as I am moving forward in my Lovin Sheila, I'm learning that conflict will exist. It's unavoidable. You know, we are dealing with others. That's what I'm saying. Well, now that we're relating to folks outside of this edifice, this body, there's conflict will arise. And so for me, it was learning how to regulate myself within that conflict with a sense of peace and a sense of calm, because during emotionally abusive situations, it's hard to get the peace. It's hard to get calm. But when we are emotionally regulated, even if that there's conflict that is existing, we can still function in our natural duties and the things that we need to do, and the things that, even in the things that bring us joy. When I'm not regulated, I don't want to work out. I don't want to eat. I don't want to do anything. I want to think about, overthink the things that are bothering me, or the person who I'm having conflict with. But in emotional equilibrium, we are able to regulate our emotions, so we are still functional, and I think that is huge. Also, we have empathy. We are able to understand and validate other people's feelings. And I want to, and that takes me back to something I said before when I said, when you communicate, I think that, and you're responsible for your communication, and you're responsible for being assertive. And I think we are also responsible for validating ourselves, because when we validate ourselves, we are not allowing ourselves to be gaslit. We understand our truth, and we are walking in our truth. And that's why we are communicating and we are being assertive with our truth. And if no one agrees with our truth, it doesn't mean it isn't our reality and it isn't our truth. We are validated in our own thoughts. At the same time, emotional equilibrium requires us, to have empathy for others and understand where they're coming from, and validate likewise that these are someone else's feelings. And another thing we have in this is resilience. No matter what, we're going to continue steadfast, unmovable, and doing the things that we need to do. We are resilient and have a positive attitude, an attitude that says we can overcome this. As I dealt with conflict, and I spoke my truth to a loved one, and it could have been difficult to hear. It may have been difficult to hear, because no one wants to hear things outside of your wonderful, your magnificent, and your lovely, and all these different. Well, we love to hear those things, but it's hard to hear things where we might say that hurt me, or whatever it is. But to be able to speak those things with a positive attitude. And my positive attitude is, I'm saying this to you, but I love you. I love you dearly. And that this does not change the fact that I love you. And again, we communicate these things and we speak things that sometimes are not positive, because we want to improve our relationship. And when we don't speak these things, we don't improve our relationships. We give a landing place for resentment and bitterness and things like that. And more importantly, I think we lose our vulnerability, which is something in loving ourselves, I think that we have signed up for, is being vulnerable. And so when we speak these things with a positive attitude, we remain light, we remain loving, and we remain receptive, empathetic, and I think we enhance our relationships. And I think I lost my train of thought just a little bit on that. I think I may have been thinking a little bit too much, but I just wanted to say that. So maintain a positive attitude. Those are all the attributes of emotional equilibrium, which also brings me to something else that was the book mentioned was so we are recovering our self-esteem after emotional abuse. Now, Nathaniel Brenden gave us 6 pillars of self-esteem. And so since we identified that emotional abuse is like a championship fight against trying to steal your self-esteem, we have to work and recover our self-esteem. And we need to have some pillars, according to Nathaniel Brenden. There's 6 pillars of self-esteem. And I want to share those with you. I wrote them down. It's a practice of living consciously. of having awareness, like we talked about just a minute ago. Just having awareness and how everything is working together. I recognize that when I don't speak my truth, when I don't have my voice, how I, when I am not heard, how I then become guarded. And that is the opposite of being vulnerable. And so I'm living a life consciously because I don't want to live my life guarded. I want to take down the mask. And that leads me to another thing right here. She said in the book, she said, shamed by the feeling that they can never let anyone know who they really are, they may choose isolation and aloneness for fear of being unmasked. And I choose not to be isolated or not to be alone. And I choose to be unmasked because masking is not the real Sheila. Masking is not me loving Sheila. It's me hiding my true identity. And if I love myself and I'm functioning with self-esteem, good self-esteem, then I'm loving myself. So that's living consciously. Another is self-acceptance, just accepting yourself for who you are, whatever it is, embracing you and having positive self-talk, even if I don't, have guns in my arm or whatever, I still accept me and I value me and appreciate me. That's another pillar. Self-responsibility, taking responsibility for my goals, the things I want to do and how I'm going to achieve it. Self-assertiveness, I'm there, I'm living for it right now in every way, hoping to grow all my relationships, hoping I don't lose them, but if they're to be lost, then they were not for me, because part of the pillars of self-esteem is self-assertiveness, and we have to do it. Bottom line is, if we don't assert ourselves, if we don't speak up when things are bothering us, or if we don't speak up to create the life we want, there's no one else who will. No one's going to create the life for Sheila that Sheila wants, but Sheila. I have to be an active participant. And so in order to actively participate, I have to assert myself. And living purposefully. Everything I do is purposeful. In my journaling, in my podcast, in my thoughts, in this series that I'm doing, it's all purposeful because as I'm talking about it, it's helping me to grow. It's helping me to realize things in myself. So I'm living purposefully in everything I do, consciously making decisions. Okay, I don't like the way this is working out. I don't like the way my workouts are working for me. What can I do to change that? Okay, so I had a habit of drinking coffee every morning. It was solely a habit with lots of cream, lots of sugar. It wasn't needed. It doesn't perk me up or anything. It was a habit. And so I said, okay, well, I think that might be counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do in my workouts. Let's lose some of this sugar. So that was part of the steps that I'm taking because I'm living consciously. I'm aware of all the little things that are contributing to my output. And so to get the output that I want, I'm going to have to change the input that I'm giving. And then to live a life of self-integrity. Do the right thing for yourself and for others. And I think that's going to help to build where we feel good about ourselves, where we feel good about who we are. And if we stand on these things, no matter what name calling, what rage, what people pleasing people may want, if we stand on those pillars, then we can reflect properly ourselves, who we are, maintain our identity, our self-respect, feel good about ourselves, effectively having good self-esteem. And furthermore, if we're applying care, affection, and trust, and all the attributes of love first to ourselves, remember that we're so careful to give it, but make sure that it's applying here. And I should have said this a long time ago, because this Lovin Sheila journey is exactly about that, loving ourselves. And we're starting there, because before we can take care of everyone else, our children, our husbands, our parents, we must take care of ourselves and make sure that we're at our best, are functioning at a level where we are making the most of what we have. And so that's what I want to leave you with today. We're not surviving emotional abuse. We are recovering and we are thriving after emotional abuse. Continue to love yourself, to continue to build yourself up, speak life-changing affirmations, walk through life with critical reflection of yourself and your interactions and your relationships. Apply a critical reflection to that. And I think we will get to the next level. We will get where we're trying to get on this journey. Thank you for watching Lovin Sheila. I appreciate your time and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you.